And Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, after listening to many insightful presentations from experts, let us continue the event by having panel discussion between honorable speakers and invited panelists from ASEAN member states with Ms. Monica Marigawati, Research Analyst of ASEAN Center for Energy, as our lead moderator. As a research analyst and technical officer in ASEAN Center for Energy, she is currently responsible for the engagement with government officials, leading various studies on renewable energy and energy efficiency investment, as well as ASEAN's energy policy. And prior to ACE, she was a developer of wind and solar farms in Indonesia. Please, Ms. Monica, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Parisha, the Madam of MC for today. Hello, everyone. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Monica Marigawati. I am the research analyst of the Sustainable Energy, Renewable Energy, and Energy Efficiency Department of ACE. It is my great pleasure to host the discussion session with the distinguished speakers that have shared their experience, their knowledge in the morning and until now, the previous session. And to begin with, I would like to briefly introduce the speakers that have shared their insight. Just to recap what we have discussed so far. First is we will have Mr. Sui Lian Fang, the Deputy Chief Engineer and Director of CRI. Mr. Sui, if you are available, please turn on your camera. And also, we will be having Mr. PT Ngamra Pasong, the Sustainable Hydropower Specialist, Mekong River, and also Professor Shi Guoqing, Deputy Director of CSHERRC. Please, Mr. PT and also Professor Shi, if you are still available here, please turn on your camera. And also Ms. Liu Yuying, the Associate Director of CRI, and also Dr. Satoshi Ishihara, the Senior Social Development Specialist of World Bank, the four that have shared the experiences and interesting information and insights about the community development of hydropower project. Please turn on your camera if you are still here to join the discussion session. And then last but not the least is the latest speakers here, Ms. Chiara De Adamo, the Energy Data and Policy Analyst of International Energy Agency, and also Dr. Zhou Xingbo, Deputy Division Director of CRI. Besides these remarkable speakers that I have recapped so far, I would like to also begin.
Please open my video camera. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Can you open the video or you cannot?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Happy to see you here, Professor Shi. So allow me to continue. So to begin the discussion, I would like to also begin with introducing another three additional experts who will share their valuable experience and knowledge joining the panel with us. First is Mr. Gong Heping, the Deputy Director General of CRI. He has engaged in policy research, standard revision and setting, planning and design, supervision and evaluation, consulting and review, and project evaluation of land requisition, compensation, and resettlement for construction projects, as well as the coordination of major issues of land requisition and resettlement projects in several projects in World Bank and also Asian Development Bank. He has been involved in many technical decision-making process for dozens of large water conservancy and hydropower projects across China and also several others in ASEAN. Hello, Mr. Gong. It is our pleasure also to welcome you here in the discussion session. So to begin with, noting your experience on foreseeing the land requisition and resettlement of many hydropower projects, could you share your thoughts to begin the discussion? That was posted by Mr. Tang Ji from the World Bank before. So allow me to reread the questions from Mr. Tangji, which is from the policy perspective, how can the value of power system ancillary services such as storage be valued and regulated so that the private investment can be mobilized in pump storage and battery storage investment? Is there any good country examples, maybe from China, that you could share about this implementation and investment? Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Gong.
Yeah, I know this is a very complicated question, so I will switch to Mandarin. The pumped hydro, in essence, it's a hydropower engineering project. It has two functions to play. For the grid, it can provide compensation services or regulation services, and also it will coordinate with the power source side by side with the PV plus wind to make sure that they can seamlessly integrate into the grid. So for that two function, you need to price them differently. So currently for the pumped hydro tariff, because the pumped hydro stations, they don't add additional capacity. They actually consume capacity. For 100 kilowatt hour, 20 will be lost. You actually give back 80. That is kind of a percentage you get ultimately. Currently, we have the two-step pricing. One is called the capacity price. The other one is a power price, a tiered pricing system. For the power price, it has the peak shaving regulation, frequency regulation, backup, and ramp up functions. For all those function components, the only component related to power generation is peak shaving. Basically, we are using the off-peak load time. The residual capacity will be used to pump the water into the reservoir. In theory, at off-peak hours, the residual off-peak tariff is low. At a peak hour, you use the water to generate additional electricity. We call it a power price because at the time you generate electricity at a much higher price. You may spend 100, you pump with 100 kilowatt, but you give back 80. Although you are losing 20, but with a higher price, you can actually earn a revenue. That is basically based on the market price. You use the market mechanism to generate 80 kilowatt hour, but a higher per unit price, which means that you can get the gap for your revenue. That is called the power price. Because that reflects the value of peak shaving component. You need to shave the peak. You sort of buy from the grid and you give back to the grid at a higher price. So that is the power price component to deal with this cost component. The other function is called capacity price in Chinese. It's a kind of power electricity cost. Apart from peak shaving function, you also need to do voltage, system backup, and the black start, and frequency regulation. These things you don't trade in the market. It has a value, great value even, but you cannot price it because you don't have buying and sell to show these elements. It's impossible to price them. So then why do we want to have a pumped hydro station? For 1 kilowatt hour, it's 5,000 to 7,000 yuan per kilowatt hour. You need to get back the upfront investment. So we need to have a capacity price to cover that cost. Capacity price means that we try to monetize the peak shaving, voltage adjustment, black start, system backup, service value. We try to monetize them. So it's a sort of a fixed asset return on investment. We just call it capacity price, basically to get back, but of course at a discount rate. And you have a simulation modeling, you use a discount rate to set a capacity price. And this will be absorbed by the distribution system, the power grid. And a part of it is absorbed by the overall revenue of the grid, because the grid can massively connect with a low price PV and wind. It can get some revenue, and that will absorb. And of course, it is absorbed by the end users through the transmission and distribution line. But for the households, for the household, it's difficult to adjust a household price. People will be upset. It will change the price. So usually that part would be passed through to the industrial users. They may need to pay extra to absorb this. So starting from 2022, we are beginning to use this model. Before this year, we had a so-called approved price per kilowatt hour, how much money, and you just calculate a cost. And that cost is primarily absorbed by the grid. But in future, we are connecting with more PV, more wind. We will have a greater cost. We need to build more pumped hydro stations. The older pricing will no longer work. The grid simply cannot absorb all the cost. So starting from this year, we are using this new model. And also for the pumped hydro station, they are sometimes bundled with the PV and the wind at the power source side. They contribute capacity, electricity. So it's considered as a power source, no different from PV and wind. And also you can put a small component of thermal power. So once the electricity, the bundle electricity getting to the grid, it's very stable. So in that model, the pumped hydro stations need to get return from the price in PV and the wind partners in the same bottle. Going forward, PV and the wind price will go down. And once the price is sort of a more efficient cost control revenue, which will partially transferred from the PV farm, the wind farm to this power pumped hydro station. So together they provide very stable power for the grid. So you can see it serves multiple functions. For each function, we need to calculate a different cost component and price it in the system. Okay. And for, hydropower in the past already took these functions in the older system, but in the past, they were not rewarded for their contribution. But now, hydropower, especially in the big basin, often you have the bundle development, PV, wind, pumped hydro, thermal. The power stations, they were connected with this ultra high voltage transmission lines already. You use the transmission lines and you have a local PV, wind, you just bundle them together, put it into the grid. So the grid is very stable. Everything was already balanced before getting to the grid. And the hydro station, they directly generate electricity and they're bundled with the PV and the wind. PV and the wind in future will be cheaper and cheaper. That offset, it's partially its cost. So I think in my view, the vast majority of its revenue actually comes from the lower cost of the wind and PV. But of course, it could be an issue if you have different project owners. If it is under one energy group, it's easy. They just do internal balancing work. They can work out the economics. But if you have a multiple project owners, it could be a headache. I know that in future, China will scale up massively the PV and the wind. And we hope in the future, we will better monetize the pumped hydro value. This system is very new in China. It's very new. We are exploring whether it works. We may experience new challenges, and we can talk about experience in the future. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry, I missed one point. Another is a green certificate, trading of green certificates. I think in Chongqing City, they have a pilot program. In the past, we have PV and the wind eligible for green certificates. they can be traded as a power attached with the green certificates. Starting from this year, newly added hydropower is eligible to get green certificates and get traded in the market. So the green certificate trading revenue can offset at least partially the cost from PV, wind, and new hydro. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gong, for the, I would say, comprehensive, and also it's, I realize that it's close to the implementation for the ASEAN countries. I noted 5 important points from your answer. First is the importance of peak shaving in terms of the technical elements, and then how to price this peak shaving into the capacity price, which will help incentivize the storage, not only pump hydro storage project, but also other storage project, what I understand from your explanation. The third is also to transfer all these upfront costs to industrial players, not directly to the household. And then fourth is to design the hydropower project in with the wind and solar to complement the intermittency of each other. And then fifth is the green certificate, which is really great recommendations that we can easily adopt in ASEAN for the green certificate part. But again, thank you very much, Mr. Gong. So without further ado, I would like to move on to our second additional speaker that I would like to introduce and already stand by here is Professor Chen. So Professor Chen, sorry, Professor Chen Xiaojun, the Deputy Director of the National Research Center on Resettlement, or NRCR. She is a chairman of the Resettlement Sociology Committee of Chinese Sociological Association, member of the Reservoir Resettlement Committee of China's Society for Hydropower Engineering. She has rich experience in about 50 projects as senior advisor and consultant in the World Bank or Asian Development Bank loan over 30 years. And she has published 6 books and over 60 studies in volumes in Chinese and international academic journals. She also led 6 research projects financed by China's National Social Science Foundation and other institutions, and has won over 10 ministry or province level awards. Hello, Professor Chen. Sorry to make you waiting. So without further ado, I would like to ask the second questions for our discussion. Noting your extensive experience in both practice and also in research, may I seek your thoughts on what are the specific practices and measures in resettlement planning, livelihoods, restoration, and mobilization that you would find need to be the priority for the ASEAN member states? And maybe the second question is from the audience. I noted from Hendra Kurniawan also asking if how do you carry a resettlement program, particularly for the indigenous people who reject to be relocated? So over to you, Professor Chen. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for the the invitation. Yes, I'm yes, Xiaojun Chen from Hohai University. And that is a great topic because the dams project development should consider the resettlement. It's a key challenge for the sustainability hydropower development. And resettlement for the resettlement, the key issues is the livelihood restoration and the community development. That's obviously is definitely is the key challenge. And also resettlement, the livelihood restoration and community development related to many divisions. For example, economics and economics, that specific income generation and jobs creation and kinds of the human capital, something that's important. And also, just you mentioned that indigenous people, they have the cultural, religion, and the social network. That's the whole issues that should be considered during the resettlement planning and implementation. Also, the community development, resettlement, and livelihood restoration is a long-term process. It's not to say the project constructed and that is a resettlement process is there. It could be beyond the project construction or operation. So that is a long-term process, cover the entire project cycle and the project embedded to the project activity actually. That also I think that is in China we have the benefit sharing program, or we in a international perspective we call that is a win-win approach, that we are doing kind of the developer that's between the hydropower generation and affect the community. That is oriented the resettlement community sustainable development. So that is important. So return to your question, I think that is in China experience and practice, and actually we consider the resettlement working mechanism or planning into the entire project cycle. In a design stage, we use a button to up that kind of approach to do the resettlement planning. Yes, they may already introduce. We have the detailed, specific technical guidance for the how to do the resettlement planning. But however, during the planning process, we will consider the community engagement, and that is a top two. That is important to top approaches. For example, resettlement site selection, relocation planning, and the livelihood restoration program. All those activities will consultation and participation to the village level and local level. So that is a design stage, and in the implementation stage, we will integrate those into the local resettlement implementation plan. That's also we have in China we have the clear GRM system. The people can raise their concern and issues through that GRM canal. Also, that is they can use their community level, the leader to raise their concern and discuss with the implementation bureaus such as the resettlement bureau from the different level. So that is the implementation stage. Also, we have the restoration stage. Restoration stage, the project post supporting program could be a case, and to help the resettlement people to their livelihood restoration. And also we have the resettlement monitoring and the supervision system to issue those kind of the people to their livelihood, to measure those kind of people, their livelihood is a real restorated or not. Those kind of things is actually is a meet the international standard. We did a lot of the World Bank and the ADB project. They have also the monitoring system there. So for our Chinese practice, in particularly for the dams project, that's kind of the principle is similar with the principle of the international standard. And actually, we have another program, the experience for the resettlement development stage. The resettlement development after the restoration, our Chinese practice that is we will integrate those resettlement people into the social society development. So, for example, the poverty reduction program and rural revitalization program. So that those will be, that will ensure the people can be restored and development. So those kind of the experience is very important. So for summary, for what I think that is the first of all, I think that important to including in China practice is including the community development, for example, including the physical space, economical, income and culture, religion, or such kind of things into the policy. That is, we have the policy level, and then we have the planning level into the entire project cycle. And also we establish the community engagement mechanism or canal to the community people, in particularly for some kind of the poor people, vulnerable group people in the priority. And also we have the experience a kind of the volunteer in China we call it social worker involvement. So help those kind of the people to establish a social worker station in within the community to help those kind of people. So and also we have the kind of the practice for we establish a smart management system to get the data and to direct it to make the service community service efficiently and effectively. So that's the summary. And also we have the supporting supporting program that's very important for the restoration for the cause their very vulnerability. So I think that the poster supporting program we have 5 years or we have the 20 years supporting program. That's important. And finally, I think that incorporating the resettlement development into the local government program is also the engine to driving the resettlement communities development. So that is also the important. So that's a summary. So for the future, we have kind of the recommendation, if the possible, we can do that is, can we consider kind of the setup, the resettlement livelihood, sustainable development and the community engagement standard or guidance, if possible. That is very important. And also establish a monetary system to issue the resettlement community and livelihood restoration. And all that monetary will also address the hydropower enterprise social responsibility issues or some kind of the social license or something. So, and finally, I think the recommendation is established from the Asia perspective. We may establish the resettlement sustainable development, a good practice database or case database or something. That's very productively and useful. So thanks. That's my brief, consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Chen, for the insightful remarks on the resettlement. What if I can summarize again in one sentence, perhaps the key words are it's a long process. It needs to be a whole cycle process starting from planning, implementation, and restoration, and it involves multi-stakeholder and also multi-dimensional sector to make this work. So again, thank you very much. It's very deep explanation despite this short time. So without further ado, I would like to move on to the third speaker here. Allow me to invite Mr. Sigit Herwanto from the PLN Indonesia. So Mr. Sigit is an engineer from the PLN and focusing on the quality assurance of the project implemented there. I hope I described your work correctly, Mr. Sigit. So without further ado, I would like to ask to you about what is the plan that PLN has for the hydropower project development in the next year, perhaps, or in near future. So, and what are your thoughts and on how PLN value this sustainable hydropower development? So over to you, Mr. Sigit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Monica. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sigit Harwanto. I'm from Indonesian State Electricity Company or PLN. Right now, I'm as a project engineer. And now in my company as a PLN Indonesia, we are have a program that in the 2025 we are we have a program that we have to the target of the renewable energy for 10,000 megawatts, which is not only for not only in the for the hydropower plant, but also for the other renewable energy plants, which is the wind and also the solar panel. And also PLN as a company in Indonesia is always concerned about the clean energy that we support of the clean energy that we will provide for the customer. And we hope so. We hope not only from the target 2025, we also extend for the target until 2030. That we hope we can achieve the target maybe twice of the target in 2025. So the PLN now we're running a lot of construction of the renewable energy plant in several places. That for now we focusing for the hydropower plant, which is the type of power pump storage plant, and also the different hydropower plant. So maybe this is the program from PLN in the next future that we will hope will be achieved as a target. So thank you, Ms. Monica.
Thank you, Pak Sigit, for the kind sharing of PLN's plan. So I noted two important key words from your explanation. First is until 2025, PLN is aggressively expanding the green energy development, which I conclude it is prioritizing the hydropower with pump hydro storage project, and also designing it to be also accommodating the hybrid system with wind and solar. So I hope I conclude your remarks correctly. So without further ado, I would like to also move on to other speakers that already joined with us since this morning. First, I would like maybe to move on to Mr. PT from Mekong River Commission. So we noted that we cut you off before towards the end of your presentation, despite actually I found that the last bit of your presentation is the most interesting part, which is about introducing the benefit sharing instead of compensation. So could you explain a bit more on the differences between these two concepts and give us some examples from the Mekong countries? Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. I actually mentioned the compensation and benefit sharings in my presentation, which is for basically for easy and simple explanation. Is compensation is normally made by the developers. That's like a one-time payment from the developers to the locals, and the benefit sharings. It kind of need registration and also the government to support the policy, and it's like it's as long as possible and as long as forever that this support from the governments and support from the developers in not a direct support, but it is kind of indirect support, which normally we get some money from the project, from the power generation, and hopefully that this will be like to use the mitigation proposed to the locals, to the what is called sensitive communities affected by the projects. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's answering your questions, and I think it's also echoing what Professor Chen has mentioned
Yes,
about.
yes.
Yeah,
Actually, the professor Chen very clearly explains to all the benefit sharing that with a lot of experience, which is very important to the social assessment, because we will need a lot of experience, and also in terms of the project cycles. The keyword that adaptive management is very important for the project cycles. You use your experience, you use your lesson learned, and get more and more, and then to improve the planning and design to reach the requirement for the low cost and also for the project to maximize the benefit and also to minimize the effects. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Mr. PT. Professor Xu, do you want to add something?
Yes, I would like to share my view about the benefit sharing. And actually, we wrote one paper in the fifth last year in impact assessment and project appraisal. You can access in the website. I think actually I discussed these issues with Professor Tadani, the professor in the Arizona University, and Dr. Mama Zema from ADB and World Bank senior staff consultant, actually, and the Professor Shaojun Chen. And very important that is composition generally is based on the marketing, the principle. And so you lose land, you lose house, then based on the principle of the marketing price, then you get the composition from the developer. The very important, the World Bank and ADB principle that they use the replacement cost. This is the replacement price. So this means you lost one house, you get the adequate the quality, space, and the same house. So this is adequate composition, and I think it's a fundamental requirement in the displacement resettlement caused by hydropower and all other development projects. So this is the best the marketing principle. But because we are displaced by someone, especially involuntary resettlement caused by the developer. So maybe we should share some benefits. So according marketing principle, normally they can get additional 10% or 15% additional compensation based on the adequate compensation. This is in the marketing countries. So, but this still is a compensation, but plus some additional amount of benefit. But the benefit sharing, I think, is generally the base. The fundamental requirement is adequate composition. Okay, so then above this adequate composition, the affected people can get additional benefits. But the benefits can be from the different approach. Like my presentation, the people lost the house, but they get a better house. The value, the space, the quality, the conditions of the house is better than before. So this is also the benefit sharing for improve the living conditions. For public service, the water access, electricity, transportation, healthcare, education, and all culture center, religious structures, and those public facilities. And through my presentation, you can see the community get a better public facility. This is also the benefits, because through the displacement resettlement, the people get the better public service and public facilities. So this is generally, it's also very easy to be integrated in the resettlement process. If we can increase the composition and the resettlement reconstruction standard, it means better off. So it means the developer have to spend additional money to pay for those costs. But this can be integrated with the cost of the project, then through the tariff, then get a return, then through the payment of the custom, through the market, through the bill of the electricity payment. So this is, I think, is a reasonable principle and cycle. It can be easily to be achieved. But for livelihoods, it's really difficult because each person is a different capability, different education, different the skills, different knowledge, different, all difference, different family, different people, young generation, young people, old people, mid-age. So it's different. So sustainable livelihoods is need to take account. This is economic displacement is rehabilitated this long journey. So like Professor Chen said, so this is the reason why we need the post-relocation support, because this is we have the sustainable livelihoods capital by defeat by UK, by some scholars. We lost the physical capital, natural capital, finance capital, social capital, home capital. So those capital composition is not easy. So this is can be defined. So with some program, but it should be target different needs of the different people. So this is a long journey, but it's need responsible by the government, by the affected communities, by the affected people, also develop a company. But I think as the marketing principle, marketing mechanism, the developer company cannot take the many responsibility to detail for implemented this. This should be implemented by community, by government, by civil society, by affected family itself. But maybe we can establish some finance fund, finance support as a fund to this kind of sustainable livelihood development, and even the community improvement fund. So this is my thinking, but I think this is a very important, this scientific issues should be researched as a science by the economist, sociologist, management science, and rural economics, and home resource development science expert, and should be educated through the training, through the education program. So this is the reason in Hohai University, we have a PhD and a master program in resettlement science and engineering since 2003. So this is a very important, it's a need to sustainable education in resettlement science and engineering, resettlement sociology, resettlement economics, resettlement psychology. So then can be sustainable. So this is my view regarding the benefit sharing. In China, also we have a national strategy, national official documents to formulate this benefit sharing mechanism. But if really it's really difficult to implement that, how to do better. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shi, for the insightful sharing. So what I noted from your sharing, and it is really important for member states, is how we measure all the loss and what the compensation and also the social impacts of this hydropower project. And it is something important that we need to address. It is complicated, but that's once we tackle the measuring these impacts, like what you do with the project appraisal, it's like it's starting to unravel the next steps for the government from other stakeholders to refer to this measurement, the research on valuing these impacts and loss with the community and future development. So thank you for the great insight. So I noticed that before Mr. Satoshi raised hand, so I don't know what you want to add, but I would like to ask something like conveying the questions from our public participants is about the. So there is a question from the from Miss Christina asking that there is a gap between international standard or requirement for social safeguard with local custom law or rules. The question is, what should we do? For example, to calculate level of compensation in local law is, for example, there is no depreciation for the affected structure value. And also, but in international standard, there are compensation for it. So can you share more your thoughts about that and from your experience in the World Bank? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I can just say very quickly about this benefit sharing, just building on what Professor Shi said. I think from the compliance perspective, from the IFI policy perspective, it is very important that we advise strongly against confusing between compensation and benefit sharing. It is okay that the developer may do something and call it as benefit sharing and actually use it as part of compensation, but it's caused a lot of confusions because the policy-wise, our requirement is to restore livelihood. So whatever the livelihood that need to be restored is the company's obligations. And they need to fulfill these obligations. And on top of that, they may need to do some additional benefit sharing in order for them to gain social license to operate and all other reasons. But confusing between, mixing between the compensation and benefit sharing can actually blur this obligation of the developer that they have to make their efforts to help the displaced people's effort to restore the livelihood. So that aspect is obligations on the part of the developer, which need to be very clearly separated from some discretionary action by the developer to share benefit. So that's conceptual separation is very important in my view. So I just wanted to clarify this. But on this gaps or difference between IFI policies and national laws and regulations, well, the quick answer is that what the IFI funded project need to follow IFI standards. Whether it be ADB, World Bank, AIB, doesn't matter. So it comes down to the question of the source of funding. Yeah, there is no obligation on the part of the government to follow IFI policies where no money from IFI is involved in the construction of hydros or anything else. But of course, we do encourage the government not to apply the depreciations and so on and so forth in order to avoid or minimize risk of impoverishment. But that's a separate question. Yeah, so I think it's very important to separate the question of compliance and question of good practice on social risk management. Yeah. So again, from compliance perspective, the depreciation need to be covered, and then IFI policy need to be followed only if IFI money is involved. But again, from social risk management perspective, that's a different story.
Okay, Thank you, Mr. Satoshi, for the explanation. So it gives me clearer view that there is a difference for the benefit sharing and compensation terms, and also compliance and good practice, which I think more capacity buildings is needed for government, for the developer to really understand those different terms and different strategies about this. Thank you very much for your kind sharing. So I would like to give the floor for other speakers who have been waiting. Next is I would like to give the question to Ms. Shara for the from the IEA. So there is one interesting question from Mr. Hendra Kurniawan, asking specifically related to your presentation is how do we keep the energy security produced by hydropower plant? Meanwhile, we expect climate impact to our water resources, particularly in Southeast Asia. Should be shifting to another energy resources years to come, or is there anything we can do to secure our hydropower plant productivity? So over to you, Ms. Chiara. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the question. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay.
I can hear you.
So I think that something has already been said during this workshop, but maybe it's never enough. So just to remember to everyone that hydropower is the backbone of clean energy transition that is currently generating more electricity than all the other renewable energy sources combined. And also, like, regarding the economically viable potential that the hydropower has basically globally, it's already mainly untapped. So I think that from my perspective, the question is not whether to shift from hydropower generation to other sources, because hydropower has already and will continue to have a relevant role in the clean energy transition if we want to reach net zero emissions. So as I said at the end of my presentation, we just released an analysis on all the climate impacts for the energy sector. And basically what we saw is that there's no energy subsector that is not vulnerable to climate impact. So I presented today the impacts on hydropower, but hydropower is not the only energy sector that will be impacted by climate change. In our report, we saw the impacts on water cooling demand, for example, for thermal power plants or nuclear power plants, the impacts on critical minerals extractions, the temperature rise and the consequences on solar PV efficiency, or for example, also wind turbines that will be shut off after 45 Celsius degrees as a protection measures. There are effects on fuel transport. I'm thinking about oil and gas pipelines, but also on refineries. So basically, and one of the most vulnerable sector is the electricity transmission and distribution network that is affected also by wildfires that will continue to increase with temperature rise. So what we need to consider is that the entire energy sector is at risk because of climate change. What we saw in the report and what I presented also today is that the impact will vary a lot according to the greenhouse gases emissions. So all the mitigation actions that we can put in place, for sure they have benefits on the climate resilience of this kind of system. In order to enhance the climate resilience, the first things to do is to assess climate data and climate hazards. So the lack of robust data will limit the implementation of effective measures. So that's why I guess that the most relevant things to do is to put together all the relevant energy stakeholders. So put together the finance sector, the private sector, the academia and international organizations as data providers, governments and policymakers to build a regulatory framework that will encourage all the operators to include, to mainstream climate resilience into project planning and constructions, because we saw that like recent disruptions of hydropower plants that were still in the construction phase. So it's not only important to assess the vulnerabilities of existing hydropower plants, but also to consider resilience in the design process. So from the beginning. And this is useful not only to, how can I say, not only to ensure the sustainability and the safety of the hydropower infrastructure, but also to reduce the damages, to reduce the cost, and to reduce the loss of life that is related to the climate-related, to the hydropower-related disruptions.
Thank you, Ms. Shara, for the kind warning. I would say reminder that now it's the time that we should also consider the term climate resilience, not only energy security or energy affordability. We need to go beyond, because as you has highlighted that climate not impacting only hydropower, but like the whole ecosystem of the energy and maybe eventually our lives. So thank you for the great remarks. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor for other speakers here. So we have limited time. So for the next, I would like to call out Ms. Liu Yuying. So I would like to also convey the questions from Mr. Muhammad Lukman Tamrid in our online participant. He is asking, did you ever facing community or society that hard to cooperate and raise dispute or during the dam construction phase? And do you have any insights maybe from your networks, because you are working at Free, right? How to dissolve this kind of issue? Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Liu.
Okay, thank you for your questions. And we also met those problems. And I will from two parts to respond to your questions. And just the Professor Chen said, we before the project construction, the policy will be very detailed to publishing to the residents, the local, and includes basic information about project constructions and opinions and demands of to be considered. And the plan will be adjusted of the constructions, and also the residents can select their house and also a construction method of their housing, and another to where they will decide where they want to go, and what's the compensation of they will get, and this very clearly to be known and very clearly to be punished. And also the resetter will full participation in the property survey and the signature or confirming to make sure their rights on the paper, and that's between the government and the resetters will signature the framework that is legal agreement that to see all of the things include the composition and the resettle method. And when the station construct, and if the appeal and the complaint is reasonable, so we will face it, and we will have lots of mechanism to face and the appeal that is reasonable. But if the problem is unreasonable, so if that is out of the policy, so the explanation or persuasion is necessary to explain, and also government and other mechanism will have the resetters problem. For example, the three gorges company established extra fund to resolve the resetters problems, and that's the policy can the resettlement policy cannot cover those problems, but it's a balanced solution and a voluntary act to the company. So meanwhile, China have established a benefits and sharing mechanism and has been tried for 5 or 6 years to all of the stations, and that is helpful to satisfy the demand of the resetters. So that's a systematic process to resolve those appeal. So it's very smoothly. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Liu, for the kind sharing. So I noted important points from your explanation is the key is the systematic approach with the community, starting from the communication and also how to educate the villagers on the legal aspect and also other aspect, and trying to find the balance during those negotiations. Thank you very much. That's such important remarks. And let's move on to our next speaker. Our next expert here is Mr. Zhou Xingbo. So as we all know, as you also noted in your presentation, China has the largest number of dams in the world and has accumulated rich practical experience in dam safety management. So amongst those immense experience, could you share what is the good practices that you could share, for example, for the member states? Thank you.
I know it's a very technical issue, so I will switch to Chinese, easier for me to express my views. In the afternoon, my presentation had 2 parts. First, coming from NEA, Director General Xu Xingfeng talk about the surveillance and the management of dam safety in China. Currently, we operate around we actually operate 600 in the system, but in fact, we have 100,000 dams in total. For all those being built under operation, we need to have a full-fledged system to monitor them. Director Xu gave you a systematic overview of the overall system. And we actually, under the ASEAN framework, we try to help Laos to set up their dam management central station. We proposed the building of this central command system, but now affected by COVID, this work is a kind of stalled. But we do propose and help them to build a central management system for the dams. So I feel that in ASEAN countries, we already started with Laos, and we see great value in replicating this model in other countries, if you like. And another part was in my presentation, I talk about the safety management system. It has to cut through the whole life cycle of the project. Some key major risks need to be avoided at the planning phase, like a geological slide, or the active fault on the ground, or the major blocks of mountains which are prone to landslide or mudslide. You simply have to avoid those places. Otherwise, you will build it, and after the project is built, they try to mitigate that. That would be too risky and hazardous. And also, among all the design plans, the form and shape and dimension of the plan of the dam, if it is the concrete reinforced dam or the gravity band or the rock-filled earth and rock-filled dam, they're suitable for different geological situations. So this is a very technical thing, of course. You need to choose the optimal design.
And that means we need to have science-based, well-reasoned design and selection of types so that you be able to truly ensure safety in your not only construction phase, but also operation phase. So many of the risks can be well controlled and selected at the designing phase. And then when it comes to operation stage, you would be able to improve your safety performance by designing well-planned, well-organized procedures. For instance, Mr. Jian Shenlian in the opening ceremony talked about how legislation side, regulation side, and the standard-wise, we have a complete safety insurance system in place. And some also talked about the new questions or challenges around the safety of hydro dams with Ukraine-Russian crisis. This is not only true for hydro, for nuclear power stations, bridges, and major projects. We would indeed face greater challenges. That's why in our stations planning, we have already included the possible terrorism or conflicts incurred risks. And of course, we welcome our ASEAN countries' valuable references. If you have any learnings in this regard, we are keen to learn from you. And also, if our colleague have anything to add, please feel free to make additional comment. I quite agree with Dr. Zhou's comment there. When I made my own presentation, I have also made a summary of what we have learned, but you have already covered them. Full life cycle management, that is key. From the very start to operation to retirement of the dam, you would need to have a well-established management system in place. So no further comment from my side. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the great explanation. So I noted that what I really catch my attention is you have started sharing the experience and implement it in one of the low PDR hydropower sites, which is a great start. And I hope, like on behalf of ACE, we are also looking forward to have this replication to other ASEAN member countries, because we have many hydropower plants running. So that's a great news. So thank you very much, Mr. Zhou, for the kind explanation. I would like to move forward to our last and most honorable speaker, Mr. Sui Lian Fang. Sorry for keep you waiting. I would like to give the honor to you of the last question, which is maybe the essence of this capacity building, is how to balance hydropower development and environmental protection. Could you share your thoughts on this? Thank you.
Well, we had a lot of discussions today. Hydropower station as a source of renewable energy is considered as a key element of our energy mix, but in practice, development of hydropower station could bring a lot of impact to the environment. Politically, it will have an impact across the entire river basin for aquatic creatures and fishing populations. The impact could be very significant. Many of the experts today has made very informative sharings on that topic. For us in China, we have this coordinated approach to address hydropower station projects and ecological and environmental protection. As what has been mentioned earlier by my colleagues, we have a system of legislations, regulations, and standards to keep every practitioner in check. because from planning to designing to construction all the way to operation and retirement, you would find a very strong element of ecological and environmental protection reflected in legal provisions and standards requirement. Secondly, when it comes to practical implementation of the project, for instance, at the planning stage, you would need to have environmental impact assessment. The key task of this assessment is to identify the most sensitive environmental factors that calls for our most urgent attention. Globally, we sometimes call it a strategic environmental assessment. In China, we have a similar arrangement, but for hydropower stations, we have what we call the hydropower planning environment assessment. This is when we make decisions on the scale, the type, and the time arrangement for hydropower stations. In other words, the scale is subject to the result of environment impact assessment result. It will very much decide how we make all the key decisions, and such assessment is made almost in parallel to our planning activities. When it comes to designing phase, we would need to try to minimize the hydro project's impact on the environment. Most of these actions are not taken during the construction phase, because that is when you try to make remedies by bringing in additional facilities, but that is not the best solution. We will try our very best to, at the designing phase, to avoid those negative impact. For instance, if you know that nearby you have a breeding ground for fish populations, then you would need to try your very best to avoid that site at the very designing phase. And also those most vulnerable and sensitive as areas of your potential sites, you would need to take engineering solutions to avoid those vulnerable sites. For instance, there are certain functions that may lead to a low water temperature. We may need to have a tiered arrangement, engineering arrangement, to help us mitigate impact on water temperature. And also we might have the need to set fish passing facilities, but all of these need to be well studied and well considered at the designing phase. When it comes to construction, you are already implementing what you have already planned and designed. And at the national level, we have a supervision, a lot of supervision requirements. For instance, the environmental facility needed to be planned, designed, and constructed, and enter into operation at the same time as the main production facility. So all of these needed to go in parallel. That means we will give a very strong focus on environment facilities from at each stage of the project, and also taking fish passing facility. It's not a one-time solution. And with a facility, you are fine. You would need to have monitoring of the facility, analyzed how well it's doing, how is it fit for purpose. We have these adaptive management globally. We have also made a lot of actions in this regard in China. So from planning, designing, to construction, to operation stage, each stage has its series of actions to mitigate impact on the environment, so that we can make hydropower stations truly green. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sui, for the great concluding remarks that sum up all our discussion for today. So because of due to limited time and we already overshoot the schedule. So again, thank you very much for the distinguished speakers for your time and expertise for this sharing. And I would like to wrap up this discussion and return the time or the floor to my colleague, Madam MC Farisha. Thank you.
Thank you so much for Miss Monica and all panelists that I have already enjoyed the insightful conversation that we have on hydropower development in ASEAN. Now, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to reach the end of today's capacity building event. So for this, please warmly welcome Ms. Monica Merdekawati, Research Analyst of ASEAN Center for Energy, to deliver the first closing remarks. Please, Ms. Monica Merdekawati, the floor is yours now.
Yeah, thank you, Isha, Madam MC, for the kind opportunity. So apologies, everyone. I am here again to speak on behalf of my boss, Petia, which currently has another urgent issue, so he cannot deliver the closing remarks. So first, distinguished speakers, Ms. Wei Xiaowei, Director General, Department of International Cooperation, National Energy Administration, China, and High Excellencies Victor Jona, Undersecretary of State and Ministry of Mines and Energy, Cambodia, Mr. Li An, Minister Consular, Mission of People's Republic of China to ASEAN, Mr. Tang Ji, Practice Manager, the Energy and Extractive Global Practice of the World Bank, Dr. Li Shen, Director General of China Renewable Energy Engineering Institute, or PRI, Mr. Gong Heping, Deputy Director General, China Renewable Energy Engineering Institute, or PRI, and my boss also, Dr. Muti Ajay Tama, who also delivered the opening remarks in the morning, and Your Excellency, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. We are now coming to the end of the first day of the China-ASEAN Clean Energy Capacity Building Program 2022 Exchange Project on Sustainable Hydropower Development. On behalf of ACE, I would like to send our gratitude to all the partners, speakers, and panelists that have contributed to making this event a reality. I hope that the success of the capacity building event will mark a long-lasting partnership among ACE, PRI, CSHE, and ESDIR in the future. I also would like to express my appreciations to all the moderators and the speakers who have for having facilitated informative presentations about their work related to hydropower technology and stimulating discussions that carry meaningful prospects for the development in ASEAN. Furthermore, this event would not have happened without the hard work and support from all staff and colleagues from ACE and also PRI, which I'm grateful for. And ladies and gentlemen, from the excellent presentation and fruitful discussions of our speakers and panelists, we can be sure of the importance of hydropower energy in our region, as hydropower will become the baseload energy for ASEAN energy supply in the future because of its continuity and dependability in producing electricity. However, it is still constrained on a few aspects, such as we already discussed in the workshop, such as land acquisition, the settlement, and community development. And as of now, according to the 7 ASEAN Energy Outlook, hydropower stands at a total of 19.8% of total installed capacity in ASEAN. This is the single largest renewable energy source in ASEAN to coal and gas. And ladies and gentlemen, as China leads the world in keeping pace with the net zero pathway for the hydropower, I think ASEAN member states can learn many things from today's workshop. And surely we can also extend the collaboration to explore more topics on the capacity buildings, which we to accelerate and amplify our knowledge for the sustainable hydropower and produce significant deliverables afterwards, such as technical reports and policy recommendations perhaps in the future. With that being said, I'm enormously looking forward to the upcoming potential collaboration And I hope that all the participants who have taken precious time to join our capacity building series will have some insightful takeaway. And on behalf of ACE, we would like to thank you for your continued support and hope to see you again at other events in the future. Thank you. And back to you, Madam Anne.
Thank you so much, Ms. Monica, for delivering the remark. Now, please welcome Mr. Gong Hoping to deliver the second closing remark for the event. Please, Mr. Gong, the time is yours.
Oh, thank you. Director General Wei Xiaowei, His Excellency Victor Jonah, Minister Consular Li An, Director General Tang Jie, Dr. Utama, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a very interesting workshop. We have a very intense day with substantial, valuable information and experience shared on sustainable hydropower development, especially on environment protection and social safeguard, community development, and dam safety management. We had 12 insightful presentations and warm discussions. Some introducing hydropower development achievements and some explaining policies and strategies and some sharing case studies. We have all benefited from this in-depth exchange. So today the time is limited. We still have many ongoing activities run by ASEAN and Korea under the mechanism of China-ASEAN Clean Energy Capacity Building Program, Clean Energy Roundtable Dialogue, East Asia Summit Clean Energy Forum, and ASEAN-China Clean Energy Cooperation Center. We look forward to conducting deeper and more extensive exchange that will benefit all sides. Next month, Korea, ASEAN, and the Ministry of Mine and Energy of Cambodia will take the AMS guests to a field visit in Cambodia. The project was introduced this morning. I will also be there. I sincerely hope we can work together to bring this year's capacity building program to a successful end. China and other members are good neighbors, and both have rich hydropower resources and desirable development conditions. By promoting sustainable hydropower development and leveraging is an advantage in grid peaking. Countries could coordinate renewable energy development and optimize their energy mix based on the local conditions. We hope this event will once again encourage us to strengthen sharing our experience, expertise, and project case studies based on the needs of sustainable hydropower development in all countries and support environment-friendly and economically guaranteed projects, which bring a pleasant living surrounding and benefits to local people. Looking back on the past 7 years, China-ASEAN Clean Energy Capacity Building Program witnessed the leapfrog, renewable energy development, and the accelerated energy transition in the region. Looking ahead, we will see the common efforts of all countries to realize large-scale development, high proportion consumption, and safe and reliable power supply, where sustainable hydropower will be a key measure under the guidance of the National Energy Administration of China. Korea will continue to work together with SAE to leverage the strength of all the exchange platforms for diversified dialogues by sharing development experience. I believe we will grasp development opportunities and boost the region towards its vision of a green, low carbon, and a sustainable future. Last but not least, I'd like to express my sincere grateful to all the participants again for the warm, successful, and participation, and thank SAE, CSHE, and ESCIR for the great contribution. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gong Heping, for amazing remark. Now, ladies and gentlemen, after such exciting experience sharing and fruitful discussion, on behalf of ASEAN Center for Energy and China Renewable Energy Engineering Institute, I would like to give my highest gratitude to all excellencies, distinguished speakers, colleagues, and participants for your proactive participations. I hope this event would shed light on the development of more sustainable hydropower deployment in our beloved region. Before closing, allow me to announce our recent flagship publication of the 7th ASEAN Energy Outlook that can be accessed and downloaded via the QR code shared to you right now. Moreover, for tomorrow, ASEAN Center for Energy, in collaboration with GIZ, will have 2 report launching events, which will start at 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. via Zoom meeting. These 2 reports are Renewable Energy Financing Study in ASEAN and Biogas to Electricity Development in ASEAN. Thus, for participants who would like to attend the event, please find the registration link by scanning the QR code displayed in the screen. Once again, I would like to give my highest appreciation for everyone's coming in the capacity building event, and we wish you all to stay safe and healthy. Thank you, and see you soon at the upcoming events and activities. Thank you.